Hey, we are live. We're back, kiddies. We're back. You're listening to Restore the Republic, the voice of the people who's had enough. Enough of the corrupt judges, enough of the rogue cops, enough of the lawyers who twist the law, and the politicians who trample it. This is just a show that dares to ask the question, where did our de jure American government go, and how do we get it back? I'm your host, Sheriff Andrew Ike, on unincorporated Richland County, Ohio. And every week we expose the lies, decode the legal traps, and empower you to reclaim what's rightfully yours. No fluff, no compromise, just facts. With me as usual, Sheriff Adam Bonner on the unincorporated Summit County, Ohio. How's it going, Adam?
Pretty good. Excellent. Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting into this one.
Yeah. It's the people need us. They need us back.
More than ever. More now than ever.
Yeah, well, we'll explore the forgotten pillars of American liberty and the brave souls reviving them. Today's episode will dive into the American common law sheriff, the figure that once stood for, it was the center of justice, now reemerging as guardians of the people's rights. So that's what we're here for, to guard the people and their property. Times are tough out there. The political climate in this country is just out of control right now. So we're needed. We're needed to set things back on track, get everything going right. Well, let's start off with the origins of common law sheriff. The term sheriff, I think we went over this before, but what does the term sheriff mean, or how did it, where does it come from, Adam?
Well, shire reeve is a royal official, like in medieval England times, responsible for, the shire reeve is responsible for keeping the peace. When the American colonies adopted English common law, the sheriff became the constitutional officer elected by the people. So, and beholden to them, not to a king, not to a corporation, in colonial America, the sheriff was the highest law enforcement officer in the county. So he had the power to form posses, arrest corrupt officials, and protect property rights. So, it wasn't just a job. It was a sacred trust, which is nothing like what we see on the statutory civil administrative side. These county, commercial county sheriffs, and their deputies. If you notice, most of their badges, their stuff like that has gold around it.
Yeah.
That's a pretty good indication that you're dealing with national law of the sea jurisdiction.
Well, you brought up a pretty good point there. That
Did we cut out there for a sec?
I don't know, but you brought up a good point about we can arrest these corrupt officials, the officials in your cities, in your towns, and we were talking before this, and I just remembered that Article 1, Section 5 of the Constitution, the law of the land, states kind of basically that no state shall pass laws that impairs the obligations of contract. And what these law enforcement actors and these politicians and court officials are doing is just that. They made an oath to the Constitution, and that is their contract, so they're breaking the contract.
Right. So our authority comes from the people, basically, not from statutes, not from bureaucracies or bureaucratic nonsense, but from the Constitution and the common law, from the will of the people that entrusted us to put us in these positions to go out and execute whatever necessary to protect property and rights, life and liberty, basically. That's what they used to say historically.
Yeah.
So,
well, we emphasize that the sheriff's authority does come from the people, not from statutes, just like you were saying, not from bureaucracies. Holy cow.
Funny word, isn't it?
Choking on that word. Yeah. Well, the sheriff versus, basically what we're going to be talking about is sheriff versus the modern law enforcement here, you know. So yeah, go ahead and kind of explain what the modern law enforcement's up to.
Well, I mean, they operate under corporate statutes, so over there you'll find that they prioritize, victimless crime type of offenses for revenue generation, for compliance. They basically try to beat you into compliance under threat, duress, and coercion. Then you have federal mandates. So, either way, with those type of collaborative agreements between municipalities and, fictitious federal entities.
Yeah. Well, I think you froze up there for a little bit. Yeah, I think Adams froze. I hope it ain't me, but basically what he's talking about, the modern law enforcement, they're working, they enforce these statutes and codes that are basically made by legislation from the corporations. Hey, you're back.
Sorry.
No, you just glitched out for a second.
Yeah, I don't know if it's I got my big light like right above me and my microphone, and a lot of times that causes glare and stuff like that. Not all the time, but just recently it's been becoming an issue. So I've been having to get the right angle.
Yeah.
Anyhow, yeah, right. What you was saying, to feed into that, there's a lot of jurisdictional issues. There's a lot of collaborative agreements. There's a lot of fraud and securities fraud and things of that nature going on, that basically is the bread and butter of how these systems work, as far as that statutory. So I think you were getting into where common law sheriffs, by contrast, are elected by the people and answer only to the people. So, I emphasize it. I'm pretty sure you do as well, with your people, that many police departments are incorporated. They're incorporated entities, functioning more like a private security firm rather than like public servants. I could think of like so many things just off the top of my head, like when you're talking to them and you go, well, you work for me. Yeah, I don't work for you. Like, what? Okay, so what's your badge number? Oh, well, now they don't have badge numbers. They have call sign numbers. Well, whatever it is, whatever you identify as, and here we go with this identifying as something other than what you are, which should be a peace officer.
Yeah.
Then you get into that argument on the side of the road. So I don't want to go off on a tangent on that. That's not why we're here. But, they're functioning more like private security firms. And, the sheriff, however, is like a constitutional officer with the power to, interpose, meaning he can refuse unlawful orders from higher authorities. So as far as, these administrative sheriffs, I don't think that's how that works with them. I know some of them try to call themselves constitutional or they want to be constitutional, but you don't get to pick two masters and just pick and choose what side of the fence you're on. It's not how that works.
Yeah.
Yeah, James, I see what you mean there. He would like to know how everybody can get behind us, and support us. Well, I mean, if you were on our county, we would be having meetings with you to kind of give you ideas as to what type of support we need, whether we need posse or militia or people who can do first aid or, offer things to the community in times of disaster and need. So those are just a few things.
Well, you know what, Adam, I would say probably one of the most important things, and it really could have helped out 4 to 5 years ago. Us soil jurisdiction sheriffs, we have the highest authority in the county, bar none, to anyone in the state.
Chiefs of police,
higher than the governor.
Right.
So if we were sheriffs at the time that this pandemic started, we would have been able to help the people and said, no, we're not taking this. No, we're not locking down. No, your businesses don't have to do that. That's what we could have done. But Unfortunately, we weren't elected yet, but yeah, no governor is going to come into our county and give us a bunch of crap about what's going on. If the people don't want to do it, it's not going to happen. And that's why we're here, to protect them from for those reasons. Yeah. Well, let's explore some examples on how sheriffs can override the enforcement of unconstitutional mandates. Kind of basically what we were just talking about, protected citizens from federal overreach and unlawful foreclosures. That's happening all the time.
Yeah, I see, Samantha. Yeah, they do have department IDs. Go ahead.
Well, I was talking about, let's go over these, the unconstitutional mandates, basically what we're
Well,
just
like
talking about.
COVID, the CV-19 lockdowns, schools, boards of education passed down all kinds of nonsense, and they're still pushing the jabs and the pokies and all that type of stuff, which is nonsense. These people that work for the boards of education have no idea, the difference in jurisdictions or what your lawful authority is versus, they think they're going to call the cops like you work for them. They don't even realize that we're over all of that.
Yeah.
So,
well, you know what? One of the greatest things about this is self-governing, about our jurisdiction, and about the American government. It's a Republican form of government. It's not a democracy to where the school boards, the governor, whoever can tell you what to do. The mob doesn't rule in our jurisdiction.
right.
You do.
Right.
Each individual person has their rights. So if you want to get a vaccine, go ahead. If you don't, you don't have to. There's no argument. There's no complaints. It's just the way it is. You self-govern. We all know how to do it. That's what we're getting back to,
Right. Yeah, we had a lot of stuff like that going on during these lockdowns. There was all kinds of alleged medical emergencies. I knew long before we even got into all that nonsense that the math wasn't mathing with the science. So I spent a lot of time of my adult life in the sciences, both career and study. And it just doesn't make any sense. I was trying to get the information out as much as I could, about the spike proteins and the delivery system that they're using. And most of my family's in the medical field. So, they all knew, but, they were being silenced and suppressed. And some of them were about to be pushed out of work because they wouldn't get the jabs. And then after 2 long years of arguing and fighting it, and luckily having decent people in their unions, they ended up having a breakthrough where they got exemptions, religious exemptions. Just should have never came to that.
Exactly. That's where we could have helped out, because, this is for everybody out there too. There is no place inside the Constitution or any one of the constitutions that says anything about medical emergencies.
Well,
If
first
you
of
think
all,
it's a medical emergency, you deal with it yourself.
yeah, I think where we got it wrong, as the people of the state, is allowing them to do these types of things and make mandates. No, people should have been getting together, going and noticing these jokers at the state capitol or wherever. It doesn't take but 10 or 15 people, to go with some documents, put them on notice, we're not having it, and cause a ruckus. I'm not saying do it, violently or whatever, but I mean, you can definitely go down with your paperwork, have it notarized, get it on the record, and make stuff happen. See, here in the Republican side of things with this type of government versus theirs is you guys don't have a voice. You don't get to go, and your votes don't matter, basically. You don't have the rights that you think you have. Constitution doesn't apply to U.S. citizens. So, go into a municipal court and, tell me if you get, the first 10 amendments. Tell me if you even get properly served or noticed, or tell me if you get due process or due course of law. The answer is going to be no. Out of the 30 some steps it takes to get you to, do some type of weird appearance, while they're doing all their magic and stuff. You mean to tell me out of them 30 some steps that they didn't skip one or two, violating your rights?
Yeah.
They do it every single day.
Well, this is why we're here, and this is why it's so important that everybody out there takes this serious. It's a big deal to change your political status and become American again. Get out of that U.S. citizenship, because the U.S. government, they're not lying to you. It is a democracy. You know what I mean? So when you see it on TV and these politicians talking about it's a problem for their democracy, they're not lying to you.
Yeah, what Samantha's saying is nothing about health in the Constitution. Well, that's a self-governance thing. It's like, for instance, if you're doing a certain type of job, that requires you to be able to be present mentally, psychologically, however you want to word it. And for whatever reason, you're under duress, you're stressed out, maybe there was a death in the family. That's a self-governance thing. You have to take care of your mental health and take care of your well-being to be able to perform. And a lot of places that'll gig you on that, especially government jobs. I can tell you, I've had more than one conversation with commanders about that type of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll ding you for it. You can get
Adam, sorry, I see Arizona Assembly here from Maricopa County. I love it because we were just talking about Maricopa County. I think Jessica Saxton and Tanawa Downing, they're two litigators that I think they were in Maricopa putting down some notices on the city council meetings, and it looked pretty neat what they were doing. They're trying to get rid of this 14th Amendment that, was never ratified. So, they're working on the citizen side, and we're coming in at, as the Americans can only help.
Oh yeah, they were giving them all kinds of hell down there as far as CPS and Title 4A, 4D, 4E. I mean, Jessica was just giving it to them left and right, man. I don't even think they had a chance. I know that attorney down there, their city attorney was he was like purple by the time they called him up to the podium. He didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
So then they served the deputies, and then the attorney goes and snatches the paperwork from the deputies and says, "Take this back." And Tanawa and Jessica are just like, "No, you were served. We got to go." So they dipped out of there, and
yeah,
you should never have to deal with that. You should never have to. Who is this attorney? Who is this city attorney think he is that he's just going to go, break the chain of?
That's what we need our audience to. It's what we need the audience to comprehend. These people, well, they're U.S. citizens. They work for one of our subcontractors. We're in control here. The Americans are in control here. We gave some contracts to some service providers. They're the U.S. Inc. and the USA Inc. Those are our service providers. They're both foreign. We've been over this before. In D.C., they're two foreign corporations, and they're our service providers. Right. Now, I'm kind of, once in a while, I think, well, as soon as the Americans in our jurisdiction get a little bigger, a little stronger, we need to maybe write some new contracts for these people or get rid of them altogether,
I'm all for it. I mean, the amount of foreclosures and mom and pop shops that were closed, it's, for these unwarranted, unlawful lockdowns and mandates. I mean, who gave them authority to make medical decisions for people when we've already proven that the science isn't making sense? And yeah. Amy Acton's a joke anyways. I really don't care for her too much because, she went from being in one socioeconomic status to being a millionaire during that whole thing. I mean, it didn't take Doge to figure that out. There was a whole lot of misinformation being given by the so-called people that are supposed to be making decisions for everybody. Over here, the people make the decision, and you had better get in line to what the will of the people is. You don't get to just, oh, well, she's a medical. We don't care. She works for you. You don't
Yeah.
see a conflict of interest there?
But hey, do you know what I find very interesting? And this just happened here recently in the last couple of days. You know, our subcontractor has a CEO. His name's Donald Trump. And he's been talking for years about Pfizer and big pharma and this and that. Well, they just gave Pfizer like a $70 billion contract or something. And it's like, when are they? I don't know. I don't know what it's going to take to wake people up, but man, that's one of them. You know?
Well, I mean, ivermectin's been around for 80 years at this point. It's one of the most effective medications that you can take for a plethora of things.
Yeah.
And, you know, they tried to, and I think in 2016, Merrick, who was basically the patent holder at the time, let the license on it expire so that way it couldn't be in production to help out, with the CV-19 thing. So, and then, hydroxychloroquine and all those types of things, a lot of this type of stuff is Western medicine. These doctors, they don't learn about these types of things or holistic, types of options, natural homeopathy type stuff. I'm not saying that they don't independently study or learn on their own. I'm saying that when they're in college, Western medicine, it just doesn't focus on that type of stuff because the big pharma is basically who funds all of these types of schools and the curriculums that they teach. And pretty soon, computers are going to run doctors' offices.
Yeah. Aaron put something in there. Thanks, Aaron. Here in Ohio, we do have a lot of land in certain areas that we have a lot of Amish, and to me, it's good to, I heard the assemblies talking to some of these Amish people, trying to get them involved to become American, which is great. But
they are American.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, though, they've been doing things really old school, and I don't think they go to doctors and things like that all that much. So they have their own remedies and tricks of the trade. I think it'd be useful and helpful for everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, they got their own natural healing stuff that they do, and I guess they would be considered a permanent resident alien. I don't like the word resident.
I don't like the word alien.
Lawful resident alien, but they're one of those, But easier to set it correct.
Yeah. Well, we are guardians of the Republic. The sheriff's oath is not to a department; it's to the Constitution. That makes him a guardian of the Republic. We call sheriffs the last line of defense against tyranny. So, the people we're needed. We're needed. Me and Adam have been doing this for some years now, and we're at it every day. It's a full-time job. We're gaining traction. We're doing a lot of good things, and we're just looking for help. We're looking for more people in our counties. We're looking for more people in the state. We're also looking for people to step up to become sheriffs in other counties, and this goes nationwide. There's other sheriffs out there, and hopefully sooner or later we'll get them on the podcast here. But there's some down in Florida, Colorado. There's other places too.
We just talked to a couple guys out in the Midwest the other night.
Yeah.
We know of Jones and Butler. We don't recognize him as a constitutional sheriff. Can't really say anything bad about the guy. I have seen him on social media a couple times. That's kind of far away from where I'm at, but I would imagine I'll probably meet the guy if he's still in office at some point in the next year here when we're doing our state tour. So we'll figure it out at some point in the future, and I guess we'll bring it up at that time.
Yeah, see Samantha in the chat. She says we don't want any blue line. I agree, Samantha. I've always said. I think I've said it to Adam a few times that I'm being real. You back the blue until it happens to you, because just like that, they're on you. They go from being someone that's nice to just animal. It's crazy. We got to get them out of that.
Uh,
Go ahead.
I'm glad that the people that we have engaging with us are I'm glad that they're self-governing and they're doing their research. That's refreshing because I talk to so many people that are still indoctrinated from public education or college education, and none of that stuff matters. It's not what you think it is. I mean, you've been breadcrumbed, you've been kind of, I guess, whitewashed, into a way of thinking where you don't really think for yourself. You don't question anything. And I was always taught, question everything, that the people who are making decisions for you, question everything that they're doing or what their authority is or why they're doing what they're doing. I mean, if you take away inductive reasoning or troubleshooting or just common sense, you end up in a day and age like we're in today. People eating Tide Pods, mental health on assemblies being really, really bad. Not a lot of program. Well, I mean, there's programs that people get tokens and stuff. They're actively engaged in going to things like that, but I don't know. I just don't see a whole lot of help for the big majority of people.
Yeah.
At least the de facto doesn't really cater to the American government or its people. Two totally different jurisdictions, but the difference is that, like, on our side of things, we should be able to either redress, go to any one of those agencies or places if we need services or we need things to make our stuff run smoothly. We've already paid for that. Our people, and uppercase P, people, have already paid for that stuff time and time again. So they're holding offices unlawfully, unofficially, because they don't have the capacity to call themselves an Article 3 judge. They're administrators.
I know they're using our offices. They're using our buildings.
Usurpation.
Well, you know what? We
That's what
encourage.
they don't get, though.
Yeah. Well, we
That's our
encourage.
equipment, right? That's
Exactly. We encourage communities to elect sheriffs, to understand their lawful role and to form jural assemblies. We talked about that before. The county, you get your county running with jural assemblies, groups of Americans reclaiming their sovereignty and supporting their sheriff and upholding the law of the land. That's
right.
what those constitutions are, the law of the land. And this just isn't theory. It's happening right now. We're making it happen because, me and Adam talk a lot, and I'll tell you what, I've had enough. I'm going to do what I have to do to get their ship steering right, because that's what it is. It's a ship. It's in the sea jurisdiction.
Right.
So,
Well,
how did jural assemblies work?
Well, I mean, we're getting right into that chilly season where I could use some firewood. So, I mean, if a ship needs to be, dismantled, so be it. Well, a jural assembly, how they work, how they support sheriffs, and how they're reviving, lawful governments or governance across the country.
Yeah.
It's kind of weird because, a broader movement in Ohio counties is happening where Americans are choosing sheriffs who prioritize constitutional law. And we're kind of getting away from, the statutory, civil, or administrative ones. We're getting away from all this bureaucratic compliance stuff. Our sheriffs, sometimes referred to as Reeves in common law circles, are being trained not just in peace officer protocols. Like, for instance, I scour the internet. I get all of their internal policies, what I have access to. If I have any questions, I reach out to certain people in my area. There is pushback, who are you? What do you want? I don't have to answer any questions. If I ask for something that should be made open to the public, you give it. You don't get to ask for identification. So that shit's going to stop. Now, people have a right to go and put their counties on notice. These people, who are sitting in offices unofficially, And the only way for that to happen is if they stop gatekeeping and using their private security forces, aka police departments, even sheriff's departments, to act like they're security in these meetings. There's no need for that. People are coming in there trying to engage and have conversation. That's, it's a First Amendment protected right. It's a God-given inherent right to communicate. You should be able to go in there and redress these people. But, their egos are just so inflamed and so big that they cannot hear the truth. Would you agree? Some
Well,
places
yeah,
are decent.
what I see is, their egos are inflamed. And I also see a lot of procedural like rules and regulations they have inside these meetings. Number one, you get a couple minutes to talk.
Right.
I can kind of understand, kind of comprehend. I mean, where you could limit the amount of time, because if there was 100 people that wanted to talk, you'd be there forever.
Right.
So
1, 2,
you
or
can
3
limit the
minutes.
time, but to have 3 minutes or 2 minutes and not be able to say what you want to say, that's kind of crazy to me. And another thing is, most of these city councils, they can't talk back to you. They can't answer your questions.
Right.
And that's a problem. It's like, why are we there? What are we doing? So,
Well, from the vagueness that I've read in the majority of them across the state, like their policies and rules as far as their decorum goes, um, they can act in an indirect, direct way. It can't be specific. For instance, you've been doing a lot of these, down your way. Those are not like really loaded types of meetings. You just got a couple people. So you can kind of engage with them back and forth, and kind of do like a Q&A. But if you notice how they're asking the types of questions that they're asking, it's kind of like from a second or third party perspective. You just got to listen for it. Well, they're within the guidelines of their decorum and their policies. So, again, sometimes you got to let these people know that, I don't, that's not for me. That's for your U.S. citizens or your residents. I'm kind of outside of that. I'm here to share with you what it is that I need you guys to do. This is a matter pertaining to the budget in the county or in the city, wherever it's at, because you're paying people to commit crimes. That's an emolument violation.
exactly.
So that's pretty much where my head's at with it. Study this stuff for a long time, and it just gets to a point to where it'll either bottleneck or you'll get the information out. And there is a lot of obstruction going on currently, and people playing games, and these administrative sheriffs acting as if they're not usurping your office, telling you that they don't recognize your paperwork. Hey, like I said, I don't want to hear you complain when it's your time.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
excuse me. Well, let's get practical. Why does this model work better than their model? It comes down to a few things I've written down here. Trust. The people, they know their sheriff. They vote for him. He's not a faceless agent. I like to get out into the community and let people see who I am. And, I want to engage as much as possible. I need them to know where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
It's not like the commercial sheriff who hides in an office and, you don't respond to much, but that's what he does. And then transparency, the local control means local oversight.
You there?
The Americans on our counties, they have to hold us that, to our word. They have to hold us to what we're supposed to be doing. They have to hold us to the Constitution,
Right.
Yeah. And
right. Yeah,
really, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, we're accountable and we're liable, because of the affirmation that we took before our people that put us here. And the fact that you got deputies out here and you got peace officers who are appointed, they go through civil service exams, and I guess, whoever gets the highest score and goes through their 7 or 8 step and, checks out. Sometimes there's nepotism involved. A lot of times there is. That's not the same as, us having, the way our elections take place from lawful electors, and the fact that we actually deputize our deputies.
Yeah.
Our marshals are deputized. Their deputy marshals they're deputized. They all this plausible deniability game stuff that we see across the country, and I do talk to people across the country about this very thing all the time. It's a PSO initiative that I look forward to addressing with you this summer. It's going to be something that's brought up as a matter of fact, and it's going to have to be like a straight in your face type of conversation, because this is the type of stuff that's boiled over for so many years. It can't be swept under the rug anymore.
Hey, you know what? If these guys actually think, and I've asked law enforcement to come on and watch these videos. If they actually think that they're going to be able to commit crimes, and their department says, "Well, they were in our guideline," no, you're going to be held accountable, and that's what the people want. That's what the people need. There's no more hiding this bullshit where you think you can break the law and not be held to account.
Well, it's just one of those types of things where you got to educate yourself. You got to read, articles over at Anna's webpage. It's a good place to start. She's very good at history, delivery on some of the other things. There's a lot of things in development, so, we really don't get a lot of updates on that type of stuff. I feel like we should. But in order to learn about common law, you can always talk with your elected reeves, us or our deputies, anybody who's, corrected American on your county is more than willing to help educate you and get you to the places that you need, whether it be websites or material to get yourself corrected. And, if you're going to start assembling and showing up to meetings and making a difference and eventually raise your hands to fill these usurped positions and, start cracking a whip at these folks, back in their box. We need people who are able-bodied and willing to do the work, doers,
Yeah.
And that's what it comes down to. So, form a jural assembly. Get yourself, 24, 26 jurors for a rotation, 6 months on, 6 months off, have a couple spares in case if there's a conflict of interest or somebody's sick. Gather like-minded Americans, learn the process, support your sheriff, know your sheriff,
Yeah.
and know your rights. Start building your jural assemblies. Remember, the Constitution's not a relic. It's your shield. And we're here to make sure that it stays your shield. And if anybody interferes with that shield, they're probably going to get lashings and flogged, because you are liable and accountable over here. Doesn't matter how big you are. We all see what happens in prisons every day.
Yeah, I just think that, for anybody watching or anybody that's going to catch this on, replay or whatever, you got to start thinking that this is a big change. It doesn't seem like that to us, but to self-govern, some people can't do it. Some people just can't self-govern. They can't govern themselves to do the right thing. But it is a big change, and I heard there's something interesting. Somebody was saying, freedom is scary, and it can be, because you know what? When we come back full in force, a crime has to have a victim. There's got to be someone hurt or their property damaged. That is the
Right.
only way there's going to be a crime. So for people out there that always seem to ask us, well, what happens if I'm speeding? What happens if I'm going 50 miles an hour in a 25? Okay, now all that comes down to is self-governing. Do you honestly think that you should be going 50 miles an hour where there's a bunch of school kids or whatever? Well, number one, if you do it and you don't hurt anybody, I guess there's no crime. But if you would happen to hurt one of the kids and they found out you were going 50 miles an hour, it ain't gonna be a very good thing for you. We talk about this a lot.
Well, it's like, this topic right here, about the mental health. We got a comment that narcissists can't self-govern or change. Well, histrionics and bipolars, and I mean, there's medication for all of these things, but in Western medicine, those are usually just to screen or mask symptoms. It doesn't heal them. So, a lot of these things you're dealing with, the frontal lobe of the brain not fully developing by a certain age. And then that's what causes the issue. It's like, I don't know if you've ever met anybody who's a full grown adult man or woman, and, they might be able to go through the motions. They did well in school and stuff like that. They're very crafty at following, the social norm. This is what they're supposed to do. So they do it. But when they get done with school, they get to a point where you start recognizing it. It doesn't matter if they hold a college education, a degree or not. You start to notice that, the motor skills and mechanisms and just how they have relationships with people, something's wrong there. Like it's not genuine connections, or there's no compassion, there's lack of empathy, all of these types of things. So, I mean, these are indications that you're dealing with somebody, like if you're dealing with mandates, for instance, and, you go down there and you show them all the evidence in the world that contradicts what they're doing and they just ignore it. Well, it's either A, they're making millions of dollars and there's agenda behind it, or B, they just don't care and they want people to die. They want to get rid of people because now they have access. Say you're 23 years old. Well, they have access to that public trust until you would have made 99 years old. So that's a lot of years in between 23 to 99, where they got, access to the public cheese.
Well,
So,
I'm always looking for the cause of the problems, and when we talk about mental illness and this and that, I don't remember when I was younger so many people having problems like this, the attention deficits and the autism and this and that. So
IEPs.
to me, it was caused by something, and we got to figure out what that is, whether it's these damn
Vaccination.
vaccines, these medications, all the drug, the food that we're being, well,
I'm
if you
sure
want to
it's a
call it these
combination of
fast
all
food
of the above.
restaurants, I don't even know if it's classified as food, but the combination of all this stuff, I think that's the problem. So, it's going to take some years to get back into the groove to where, and we're trying to work on this, and this is for everybody out there. This is what the assemblies are doing. We're trying to work on these problems, especially the food, and the chemicals are spraying up in the skies and everything, the chemtrails. I never really believed in that. I would say 5 to 10 years ago, I always thought it was exhaust. But then when people started telling me about it, you look up and kind of think, well, how long is exhaust going to stay up there?
Well, yeah, so there is hope. Like we have 88 counties on Ohio, right? So if you get 88 reeves or 88, national soil jurisdiction sheriffs on your county, all of you guys could form your coalition and go enforce that there's no, you can ban it. It can be banned to where that doesn't happen anymore. You can start, putting the stick to these private contractors that are crop dusting or chemtrailing. And, you know, if the states underneath above finally got rid of it, what, last year, the year before, I think Kentucky or Tennessee, um, I think that they outlawed it. You know, there's some type of House bill passed that says they're not going to be doing it anymore that way. Why is that something that's not happening across the country? Why did it begin in the first place? Population control.
Yeah.
It's a rabbit hole, but it's the only thing that would make sense to me why you would want to. I mean, it's not doing anything good for us or the environment.
You're right. And that's a whole nother, that's a whole nother episode, whole other issues, because, you know, along with the stuff coming down, we got companies like Monsanto,
Yeah.
and you know, if you look into the history of that and the way these the fertilizers and the pesticides and all that are being implemented into our food crops, it's insane. It literally is insane, you know, and that correlates with the time of all the problems we're sitting here talking about, you know, the autism.
We talk about this particular topic all the time. When I was in Europe, when you spent a lot of time in Europe, more boots on ground, but you know, you spent a little bit of time over there. They actually ban all these additives and you know, preservatives and things of that nature. It's not in their food, so you could literally eat the same brands over there and lose weight and not change your diet, but because of these things not being in their food, because they actually ban things that kill their people.
Yeah, well, you know, I don't know what it's called, but their version of the FDA, Food and Drug Administration, they have their policy is new foods or new chemicals, new additives, whatever, doesn't go until it's proven it's healthy. Now here in the States, we throw it out to the people until everybody starts getting sick. Then you take it out. You know, it makes no sense. Just another thing that we're going to have to battle over, you know, but we're going to get it done sooner or later. We're going to get it done. It might not be me sitting here as a reeve at the time, but you know, the next guy that comes to refill my boots, it's going to be the same thing. America, you know?
Right. We were just sitting in an administrative capacity, not like in the C jurisdiction, but we were sitting in a capacity where we can push paperwork and administrate certain types of things and functions for the people on our counties. But the enforcement wasn't there until the elections happened, and you know, that's pretty much what happened for us. Yeah, Fauci, and don't even get me started. Wesley, he says, "Why do we as men tell another you are about to be schooled?" Well, I mean, it sounds like you're about to tell a joke. For me, I don't know. You're probably going to get a size 13 somewhere.
Yeah, but you know, we need to get the word out to everybody. You know, the rise of the common law sheriff. It's more than a trend. You know, it's a return of lawful governance. It's the revival of the republic, basically. And it starts with all you out there, self-governing, getting your assemblies started in your counties, in your state. You know, you
see what Wesley put. He says we don't educate people as men; we school them. He's right. So yeah, excellent. I like seeing people, you know, engage with us, and you guys are doing good over there. Keep up the good work, researching and being awake, and you know, just don't let people trample on your rights.
Yeah. So anybody out there that wants to get involved, you know, you can always go to the TASA website. It's tasa.americanstatenationals.org, or you can check out pktfnews.org, or there is Claim Your Inheritance. It's right going across the screen, claimyourinheritance.info. Check out these sites. It's got a lot of information, good resources for you to get. You know, we always talk about those trifolds, you know, that you can get out and pass out to your communities. And
Well, I just want to respond to that question.
you
The
can download them right on Claim Your Inheritance. Go ahead.
municipal courts are administrative tribunals. They're there to administer the trusts of unsuspecting American people. Hence why we always talk about securities fraud and unlawful conversion. So there, you heard it from us. Don't tolerate it. Don't consent to their quasi-judicial, fake
Exactly.
administrative tribunals.
So we got where you can go, try to find out who's involved in your state or in your counties, join the assemblies, help us out. Let's get things going. And we do have, like I've said before, a Cash App donation place on here. If anybody wants to support the channel, it's $APC 140. Go ahead and throw some cash in there if you want. But anyways, Adam, where can everybody catch you at?
I know it's right.
Media? What's that?
Samantha said, I know that's right, Adam. And I said, I know that's right. I've known it's right most of my adult life. That's why I'm on here telling you guys, wake up.
Where can they catch you at, Adam?
Well, the Reef Shop Talk 44 on Rumble. And, right here on YouTube, America's Forgotten Rights. I stream to both, so anything that's on Rumble should be over on YouTube in the playlist. You just gotta push buttons.
Yeah, I just recently got on Spotify, so if anybody want to catch an episode, just listening to the audio, go over to Spotify and check out Restore the Republic on there. That'd be cool. But other than that, Adam, thanks a lot for joining me again.
Anytime.
We got to get...
on Rumble and YouTube.
Thanks, everybody, for stopping by. Let's get this stuff going. Huh?
Oh, you know what? Here, let me type
Get this
something
stuff going. Join your assembly. Change your political status. Get out of that U.S. citizenship so you can get full functioning of all your rights as an American. That's what we need. We need help. You good? Adam, you all right? All right. Well, everybody.
Yeah, I just was.
Go ahead.
See you on the next one.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll see you next time. Restore the Republic. We're out of here.
Great, Rick.